And we're live. Welcome to the Road Ahead podcast, Pro Cycle Mobile. I'm your host, Joshua Foster, and I'm joined today at Bikebook headquarters in Brighton by Jake from Bikebook.
Hello.
And Paddy from Hunt Bike Wheels.
Hi there.
Jake, Paddy, thanks for coming on. Being my very first guests. Wow.
Proud.
I want to talk to you both today about the future of bike servicing. Do you think we can do that?
Definitely.
Amazing. Right. It's going to be a bit Jake orientated. Sorry, Paddy. Jake, can you just introduce yourself a little bit? Introduce us to Bikebook and why it's sort of in the scope of future of bike servicing.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Jake Fieldsend, co-founder of Bikebook. Bikebook is essentially, on one hand, a comparison/directory page for cyclists to be able to find their local bike mechanic in their area if they don't know where they are. But our main part of our business is building solutions to basically help them streamline their operations, become way more efficient, make more money, and become way more professional to their clients. And we launched that platform last year, which we call Workshop, which obviously Pro Cycle Mobile is using. And then, it's grown very well over the last 8 or so months. Now have shops outside of the UK, which is crazy.
Amazing.
But yeah.
So I've got 2 follow-up questions. What is your current bike? Because we've had the discussion before this started, like you are a current road cyclist.
I am.
And to follow that up, what was the light bulb moment? What inspired you? What was day one of Bikebook?
Yeah, so my current bike is a Specialized Tarmac, a Specialized fan. Although my time trial bike is a BMC Time Machine, which is a horrible thing to ride. It's so uncomfortable, but get a few extra watts out of it, so that's what you want. But yeah, basically, I used to do a lot of racing and crit racing and time trialing as a junior around Sussex. And I used to have a guy who used to service my bike locally in my village, who used to be amazing. He used to do it really cheap. Obviously, I didn't have any money at the time. And essentially, when I went away to uni, lost all my fitness through probably too much alcohol.
Yeah.
But when we came back and moved back down south, we picked cycling up again. He had sadly moved away, and I was kind of out of touch of the bike shop scene, cycling scene in Brighton. So I didn't really know where to go. So I ended up taking my bike to one of the larger retailers in Brighton. And the service wasn't great. My bike came back a lot worse than when I took it in, which wasn't ideal. But obviously knew the benefits of using local guys who are more experienced. You get a better service, and you just obviously a way better experience overall. So me and the 2 other guys that we do Bikebook with, 2 brothers called Ryan and Sam, we basically built we hacked together like a search tool that basically scraped all the data off Google to see who was around in terms of where should we go, where should we be taking our bike, and we just done it in Sussex, and it turned out there was 120 local bike shops and mechanics in Sussex alone that I didn't really know of any of them. And I think from where I was living in Henfield, there was one mechanic every mile for 30 miles in terms of radius from where I was, and I didn't know any of them. So we essentially, it was in COVID, we were just kind of a bit bored as well, and decided just to build a marketplace tool to allow customers or cyclists to be able to go on, which we thought might just be appropriate in Sussex and Brighton, to basically find the local guys so they didn't have to go through the same process of what I went through. And I think even more particularly focused on those cyclists or occasional cyclists who don't get their bike serviced very frequently. Yeah. And then obviously if you go on Google, they're going, you're getting Halfords at the top, and you're going to Halfords, when really they should be going to the person who's around the corner who can fix it right away and have a much better experience of that. So we put together a free marketplace essentially for bike shops to sign up, and then we just had a load of traction.
So how are you mentioned obviously Halfords paying to win is essentially what this is. So they've obviously got the biggest budget for ads. They've got the biggest budget for marketing. And when you search in Google, when you search in Bing, when you search in your search engine of choice, the first things that come up are obviously, as you say, Halfords. They're the Evans Cycles. They are the shops that are paying the most to be at the top of the listing.
Yeah.
So with so many independent bike mechanics, and there are a lot of really good independent bike mechanics, either both mobile or in small shops, how are you getting them ahead, or how do you plan to get them ahead of those, dominating search results where it's just go to this shop that sells car wax and get your bike serviced by those people?
Yeah, exactly. Well, interestingly enough, obviously it's all around SEO, and the competition for SEO in bike repair near me is actually not very high.
Mm-hmm.
And we're basically working on the premise that we have loads of bike shops signed up, which is way more content, which is obviously what Google's reading, to leverage that SEO so we can kind of match them in terms of where we rank, and also then searching on the long tail keywords that people who don't know where to go search, like bike repair in X location, which we can then have all of the pages of all the bike shops in that area to kind of combine to be ranking higher or maybe just below where Halfords are, and then encouraging those customers to be able to go on there and then obviously book in directly, which is a big thing, rather than having to ring up someone scary who lives around the corner who they don't want to necessarily speak to on the phone.
So the problem you're trying to solve is helping bike mechanics get seen to the consumer. Is that correct?
Yeah, so initially that's what we were only focused on.
Yep.
But we realised, we probably don't want to take on every bike shop in the UK's marketing.
Yeah.
And customer, we got to find new customers. So that's kind of how we've switched to more being the back end solution as well, because there's a lot of quick wins from just having a better system that they could take on pretty easily and get up to speed with, which would outpace the growth that they would see from attracting a few new customers from online. That's obviously still a big part of it, and part of our our USP is that we do bring customers to these shops. But also now it's the case that we've got so many shops on Bikebook that the amount of bookings that we get is obviously split between them all. So the more volume that they should get is obviously decreases with the amount of bike shops that you have signed up. But yeah, it's definitely something that we're trying to improve, and also just the education around people that don't know where to go, just to make sure that they use the local business and support local businesses rather than the Halfords, who obviously good at car wax but maybe not service.
Yeah. So Paddy, you've worked in bike shops. You've been a guy that goes and gets his bike serviced at the bike shop, and now you work for a direct-to-consumer brand. When you were looking for a bike shop, if you were looking for a bike shop in here in Brighton, or if you were looking for one, say you were out in Calpe on a training camp and you needed something, what would be your typical thing before you heard about Bikebook today? Just in anticipation of coming here, what would have been your go-to before hearing about?
Yeah, well, so I heard about Bikebook when it was like, oh yeah, we're going to go to do this podcast at the Bikebook headquarters. I was like, I should probably give that a quick Google, just so I'm not totally in the dark. But sort of as a younger millennial, you'll get on your phone and you'll have a look, and it's when I was on holiday in Exmoor a couple of weeks ago, so riding gravel, forgot my chain lube, needed to go find a bike shop to pick something up, and you go into the local bike shop and it's a really nice guy who's been clearly it's someone who really knows their stuff, but actually their website was utterly hateful. And I nearly went quite a long way out of my way to go to a Halfords, because that there will be some muck off dry lube in that place, and it's sort of actually, if you can it's make that interface a little bit easier, I think would be. It's a really cool idea. No, it was sort of an impressive thing, because fundamentally you do just go on Google and have a scroll through, and it's. If I'm not in my local area, I've been riding bikes here for 8 years, I sort of know my stuff. I'm lucky enough to have a workshop at work that I can play with, and so I sort of, if I'm outside of your comfort zone, it's sort of, it really is okay, this doesn't look like a total scam website. It's sort of been designed sometime after 2005, and that's
it's pretty good going.
Exactly.
Just incidentally, if you ever Google, you want to see the most random website, Lings Cars. Something I learned while I was working at Chicken Cycle Kit. Yeah. Lings Cars. Don't look at it if you've got any sort of reactive condition though. Yeah. Jake, what were the biggest challenges that you've come across convincing mechanics, shop owners, people in the bike industry, and please forgive me for saying this, are entrenched in their ways. Because I've been that person. I have been like, I know what I'm doing kind of thing. And then, actually, no, that's something new. So what have been the challenges on the side of convincing, bike mechanics, shop owners, but also the challenges that you found getting consumers on board with using the platform because you've got the workshop side, which is the back end, the planning management tool, but the customer interface.
Yeah, well, I mean, many pushbacks from bike mechanics. Obviously, I would say the majority of them are, 40, 50 plus.
Yeah.
And they have been using their paper diary and their pre-2005 website since they started. Yeah. So they're very kind of embedded in their system. And like from the outside in, you look at it and you think, cool, like there's so much stuff. Like if you don't need to do that paper ticket, you could just automate that immediately. But obviously they don't pay for any of that stuff other than maybe buying the tickets that they have. So it's like fundamentally trying to convince or make them understand the difference between like spending money and investing money in their business. Because obviously using a workshop tool that makes them more efficient means they can charge like what they should be charging because it's all automated in terms of the cost that goes out to the customer. And just spending way less time on admin means that they'll make back the fee, obviously the subscription fee, and more, and increase the rate in which those customers are coming back and seeing them as well, just through better CRM processes. So that's basically what I spend all day, every day doing, is explaining to businesses that they should be investing in stuff like this, and it's not a cost that they're just spending, which actually they've been more receptive to it than I thought, to be fair. And 9 times out of 10 when we show a business the platform, because it resonates with what they're doing so much, because it's all been built with mechanics. Like they tell us what to build, we verify it, and then we build it. I don't just go in and build it and think, if I was a bike mechanic, that'd be so good. So it's all kind of resonates with their process anyway, and just digitalizes a lot of the stuff they do. And obviously they don't like doing admin. They're all just mad cyclists. So the more time they can spend not doing admin and servicing bikes, obviously they're more happy, they're making more money, and obviously the business is growing. On the customer side, because our platform is so customer focused, it's not just like a back end system. Like we involve the customer a lot. They can track their service, they get full reporting, which is very similar to what you get from getting your car repaired, breaking down everything, what's been worn out, what's been replaced, when it's been replaced, all the mechanic comments and each of the different areas, which basically they love, because all cyclists who are spending lots of money on their bike want to know all of the details about that bike as well. So on the customer side, as soon as we get the mechanics up and running, feedback is always great. And we even have customers now that are going through bike shops that are getting these service reports at the end, which they're effectively using as the service history of that bike when they then come along to sell it, which means they can get more money for it because they can prove that it's been serviced properly. So in that sense, it's kind of aligning it to cars and auto repair, which is really, I think, adding a lot of value to both consumers and obviously the mechanics that we're supporting too.
Brilliant.
No, it's cool to hear. I mean, it's one of those things that like bike mechanics are professionals, and fundamentally, if we want to keep those industries alive, they should be paid like car mechanics. People are willing to spend money on their cars, and I think some of the air of it's just like a dude in a shed writing out paper tickets doesn't give that professional feel, and it's what the adding value to the customer. I think that's really cool.
There's definitely I'll come on to it later, but there's definitely a spectrum in the bikes that are fixed, and cycling is increasingly polarizing. You've got the luxury end and the boutique bike shops. You walk in, Specialized, Pinarello, everything Dura-Race, everything Ultegra, and then you've got the bike shop that's been running for 30, 40 years. It's been in the same family. It's father to son, father to daughter, family run. And they're the ones keeping the community cycling alive. You've got people making big bucks on Dura-Race, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a place for that, but it's it's helping those little helping those little family-based shops that I think is a really good thing about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because the efficiencies that they can drive from having a better system for booking, reporting, admin stuff, like, oh, you did this to my bikes. Like, no, it's in the job report. It's all in the job report.
Exactly.
I've captured everything with photos. So that's a really nice thing that I think you do.
Yeah.
So you're getting a lot of people booking through. People are using the widgets on the websites. You've got an integrated. I use it on my website. So if you go into www.procyclemobile.com, I can plug it. It's my podcast.
Yeah, exactly. You'll be able to book via Bikebook. So yeah.
Yeah, you can book via Bikebook via the widget that's installed on my website.
Yeah.
So what sort of data are you actually looking at? Are you looking at the data of transit bikes that are being booked? Because I said about the polarization, but you've got I had like an Apollo and a Carrera in the other day. They are your run of the mill mass production bikes and stuff like B-twins, your market entry bikes. Are you seeing many trends with people booking through Bikebook in an increase in certain ends of the spectrum? So your Dogma Fs, your Cannondale Super 6s, that sort of thing, your top end, and your run of the mill entry point.
Yeah, I think it's pretty broad, to be fair, and quite often depends on the business, like what they what they focus on. But I would say the area where we really add loads of value to the businesses is the high end stuff, because that's where all of this data is, they care about a lot from the consumer side. But obviously we have a load of we can see all the Apollos and everything that come through, and you see some bikes get booked in and you think that bike's probably not worth the amount of money you're just about to spend on the service, but at least you're keeping it up to keeping it running, which is obviously really important. But we integrate the system with a database called 99 Spokes, which is a massive bike database that's run by a company over in the US. But it basically means that when you're coming through, if you're going through ProCycle Mobile's widget and booking in, you can just search for your bike type and find your bike, which then starts to build out that customer's garage of bikes that they have, which that then means that when they're coming back over 6 months to a year, and if they've got multiple bikes in your system and on their side, they can see when it was last serviced and all the bikes that they've had with you, and then click in all the job reports and see what's been going on. So it builds out a really good database from both sides of everything that they're doing and all those bikes that you have. And obviously that's the data we can kind of review and see how varied it is, and it is so varied. The amount of all sorts of weird and wonderful things get booked in. I mean, we've had people try and book in projectors and stuff like that, which is
booking projectors.
TV projectors with bike mechanics, which obviously get rejected because it's not
Yeah.
what they specialise in. But so customers will book anything.
You'd have a go at that, Josh, wouldn't you?
It'd be running extra smooth.
Got my iFixit kit.
Yeah.
Just peel off the back and electrocute myself. I tried to fix the extractor fan at Lavello when I was working there and gave myself an electric shock.
Did you fix it in the end, though?
No.
Still broken.
It's still broken. Tim, if you're listening, please replace the extractor fan. So we covered trends. Do you think, we touched on efficiencies and stuff, do you think there are efficiencies or perceptions that could change around bike shops? We talked about earlier, individuals being quite paper driven, quite everything stacked high. You walk in and you can't see what the bike is because it's right next to another bike. You're just surrounded by the smell of rubber. Another bikes, you walk in and they have all this point of sale stuff. They have all these fancy pedestals and all the rest of it. Do you think there are efficiencies or perceptions that bike shops aren't aware of that could actually improve their business models? That is there anything through Bikebook that you're doing additional to the workshop side of things that is looking at, bike shops are dying. You see it occasionally, big sales, distributors went out of business after COVID. What efficiencies and perceptions do you see through bike shops that need to be picked up on? That this is just opinion based, but
I think what we've seen, particularly over the last couple of years, those bike shops that are very focused on selling bikes and e-commerce are the ones that are really kind of struggling over the last few years, because obviously the margins have depleted massively and no fault of their own. But those businesses that have been service orientated and have a workshop that's ticking over super efficiently, they haven't really seen much impact. We work with a shop in Berlin with a couple of stores called Spock's Bike Repair, and they started out, Germany's even more retail focused than the UK, so the service element of it is less. But they went out and just started, we're just going to do a repair only business, get some really good partners on, so like Canyon's one of their partners, and just churn bike service out efficiently as possible and see how many bikes we can see, and see how much throughput we can get. And they're absolutely flying. So they only opened it in August. They've already opened up their second store in Berlin, and massive expansion plans. So in the UK, I think it's like those big bike shops that are really focused on retail. How can you kind of really start to look at the workshop as the engine room of like really generating that recurring revenue month on month, and then the sales aspect obviously are just topping you up. But if you can rely on having constant throughput of customers coming through and working on those bikes super efficiently and getting them out as quick as possible, you won't see a big drop in revenues. And obviously the margin on that is all in the labour. Whereas, if there's no margin on selling a brand new bike, you can make loads of margin on doing really high quality repairs, because at the end of the day, if someone's spent 15 grand on their bike and you're going to charge them a few £100 to service it, they're more than happy to pay, because they want to make sure that that's looked after. So I think obviously using systems like ours to really kind of streamline the flow of when a bike's coming in, getting it out, getting things approved while you're working on other stuff is, you can just see massive gains in the amount of revenue that you can pull through the shop.
Are you doing anything? Well, you're on the engineering side, Paddy, but from Hunt's perspective, I went on their website the other day just to have a look through, because it's been ages since I've had my set of 4 seasons.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing in the way of, you've got the cost of living crisis, you've got massive competition now. What are you guys doing in the way of servicing, of spares, of?
Yeah. So I've been on the tail end of that point. I think it's you could say sort of like your Canyons and your Hunts, like we're part of the problem, but I think it's almost like it's the reality of like the high street is dying, because you've got to keep those shop overheads, and sort of the bike shops monopoly will always be on service and repair, and that fundamentally, if you have to have a store, there will be a place for the really high-end boutique custom stuff where people don't really care what they're paying, and the really entry-level stuff where there's not necessarily an educated consumer who needs help to make that purchase. And so I think we sit in that middle ground where we're trying to provide really high-quality wheels for as affordably as we possibly can, to spec the components we do. And so for that educated customer who knows what fitment their bike needs fundamentally, and we have customer service to help them. But I think that's sort of the market. That's probably the bulk of the keen cyclist market, is we can't all spend 15 grand on bikes, right? We want to get the best performance out of 3, which is still an absolutely exorbitant amount of money to spend on effectively a toy. But
you mentioned educated cyclists or self-educated cyclists. Do you think that YouTube coming through, channels like GCN or YouTube tutorials, I don't know, I learned a lot from Mr. Calvin Jones at Park Tool, the mustachioed man mechanic.
We had I'm Al Vines from who he worked for us for a little bit, and he's great. And so being able to go and ask Al questions on how to service bits was great. But I think those they're coming through, and I think that will always help. I think fundamentally, a lot of jobs now, I think people are educated and doing simple services on their own. But if for most sort of busy professionals, I think that fundamentally, the cost of buying tools to replace a press fit bottom bracket, it probably isn't worth it. And if you can go to a reputable bike shop who will be able to face that for you, do you know what I mean? You can spend 150 quid on a press kit to be able to press everything in, but actually you might not be able to get the absolute best finish and performance.
Press kits? I need one for 150.
I've got I've got a 3D printer at work and I print things. Okay, this is the benefit. But
I think on the YouTube side, obviously it's massively helpful to be able to understand how to repair things, but also the pace in which bikes are developing is now, they're getting way more complicated. So there's, as you say, on tools, and there's only so much you can learn before rerouting internal cabling where it gets a bit sketchy if you've never serviced a bike before.
I think I'm a decent home mechanic, and sort of I've drawn the line at like I'm just not doing hydraulic fluid at home. Like Joe, like I know it's possible, and I think if I was a mountain biker rather than a roadie and having to change it regularly, I would. But there's just a certain level of like buy-in that you can gain that knowledge, and it's all there if that's what you want to do as a hobby. But like I'm a bike racer, and like I've like ride my bike for like 12 hours a week, and like it just leaves very little time for faffing around with it outside of that. And so
I don't service my own bikes. I'm too busy servicing other people's bikes. It's some of the stuff that you gain a level of weird complexity with integrated handlebars, with all the rest of it. Question for you, Jay. Different bike mechanics have different capabilities. You have your family bike shops that have been doing the same brands for 30 years. Maybe they've been doing doors for 30 years from, retail, like distributor to distributor, from when they were being made in the UK to when they've been made in China. But obviously, if you come up to them with a set of super integrated, Dead or Aero handlebars, and you say, "Can you fit these to my Dogma F?" Picking on Dogma F because everyone knows it. Yeah. Not endorsing Pinarello here at all. But do you think the complexity of things needs to be highlighted, or like the capability needs to be highlighted? Obviously, a bike shop can reject jobs that they don't feel comfortable doing, but from a consumer side, do you want to be going in to, this is my local bike shop, they've got 50 5-star reviews, but they're 50 5-star reviews from fixing your run-of-the-mill family bike with a kid seat on the back, not super high-end stuff. How can you make that determination in Bikebook, if at all?
So I think on one hand, like obviously always best to just find the local mechanic that you get on with in the local bike shop that you want to obviously support. And I think one of the best things about bike mechanics and local bike shops is like they're essentially one big community, and I'm part of all of the forums where I often don't know what they're talking about because it's all so complicated. But they all know who to go to. If they need carbon frame repair, they go to X person, they'll send it off. Motor repairs, we have a guy who just specialises in only fixing e-bike motors in I think it's in Barrow Furnace or something, that he just gets basically all from bike shops. So they actually have such a well integrated web of different specialists that usually as a consumer you won't even know that it's gone somewhere else. They're just outsourcing the bits that they can't do, and then they'll focus on their speciality, which I think is like kudos to these guys because they are obviously technically competing with each other, but working together means that they can obviously service all these bikes, and they're all like obviously then benefiting from people coming in for the repairs, which is obviously really nice. I
send all my suspension bits to Plush in Bedford. Because I don't have the tools, don't have the knowledge. So
exactly.
No, that's
But I think it often takes a lot more skill to service an old bike, right? So you're talking about these high end things, like fundamentally, if a Di2 rear mech breaks, like you've just got to bolt a new one on. It's sort of and so I think if a bike shop and a mechanic is willing to learn and sort of evolve with the times a bit, that it's like a good mechanic is a good mechanic, and sort of road mountain bike there's some like specialist knowledge and like area of expertise and just what you're doing regularly. But I think if you know people who are like good and sort of mechanically sensitive, that's 90% of it, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So for both of you obviously worked in industry, in and around bike servicing. Or what is one thing you wish people understood more about bike servicing? Paddy, you touched on earlier about like car mechanics, bike mechanics, how bikes are getting more complex.
I think it's just like bike servicing it shouldn't be a reactive thing. It should be a preventative thing. And it's like obviously owning a bike's like owning a car. You have to obviously keep your car maintained, otherwise the DVLA will come after you. So it's the same with bikes. It's a mechanical thing that wears out the more you use it. And I think a lot of cyclists buy a bike and then don't get it serviced. I mean, when I was younger, I definitely didn't get it serviced enough. But if you get it looked after or looked at professionally more frequently, you have to spend less money on big things when they go wrong because you've not replaced your chain in 500 miles or something.
That's my one. You'd like get one of the proper chain checkers
Yeah.
and like keep an eye on that, because that gets like quite expensive when you need to do a whole drivetrain. It's sort of, as soon as a rattle develops, like tighten up the headset so your fork doesn't end up getting damaged. It's sort of that when you start to feel something, like it's one of those that we like. Obviously, I see a lot of the problems that come back with our wheels, and so it's like we think our warranty rate is actually very low, like regardless of what they like said on some of these deep dark forums that I spend too long agonizing over sometimes. But it's like a stitch in time, right? Is a lot of this sort of stuff that's sort of if it's what like just like a bearing feels a bit grumbly, like often like cleaning out that bit, re-greasing it sort of periodically. If you know you've had a really horrible wet ride or a wet winter, like do that slightly larger service if that is like at a bike shop or if that is just at home. Like it's that, and if you spend a lot of money on bikes, but you can save a lot of that if you sort of just take care of the equipment and sort of look after it just a little bit, rather than just waiting until it's absolutely destroyed and then it just then it's a big job to overhaul it all.
Hub services 25, 30, I should know because I do them and I should know my price list, but I rely on Bikebook and I rely on my price list. So it's something in the region of 20 to 30 pounds, depending on where you go per wheel. It depends on the type of bearings you have. Most of yours are, if not all of yours, sealed bearings, aren't they? They're not cup and cone like Shimano's.
No, we're all sealed bearings. Again, it's a similar one that we are direct to consumer. We know like the customers do tend to like run things into the ground periodically, and like a cartridge bearing, you can just knock it out and tap some new ones in. And it's sort of it's wasteful of that component, but you save the much larger one with sort of reasonably low effort. And so
for the most part, they're steel.
Yeah.
So at least it's somewhat recyclable.
Exactly.
So we've been talking a little bit and touching a little bit on Hunt as we've been going through. We've touched on Canyon, and there are other direct-to-consumer brands out there. And, Paddy, you mentioned deep dark forums, that sort of thing. There seem to be bike mechanics that are fine with them. I worked in a bike shop where it was like, if you bring us a Canyon, that's fine. Like, we'll order the parts, we'll service it because we want to support you. And other people are like, oh, you bought direct, not servicing your bike, kind of thing. So how do you think the rise of direct-to-consumer bike brands has affected independent mechanics, independent bike shops, and on that, if that is a struggle, what would be one thing about cycling in the UK that you would change, like cycling industry in the UK and cycling in general?
Yeah, I think obviously the industry is going direct-to-consumer, whether we really like it or not, because that's just where people buy these days. Like people don't go down to the bike shop to have a look to see what they got, because there's way more choice online. Yep. And that's obviously impacted the bike shops quite a lot, because now, as you say, the people are bringing stuff in and they can be a bit salty if they've not bought directly from them and they bought online. But like what we've been working on, and we have a few partners already, is the direct consumer brands effectively have an issue of service, because particularly like if they're e-bikes, if there is a warranty thing that goes wrong, which inevitably will be on some of their bikes, they then either have to find a bike shop that's willing to look at it that might not know what's going on, or get that bike posted back to them, which is super expensive, and then they have to look at it in their own workshop and then post it back again. So I think one of the elements that we've really been able to leverage over the last 6 months is like the power of having a local mechanic network across the UK is quite beneficial to direct to consumer brands. So we've been working with a company called Higgy Bikes, which are like relatively mid-range e-bike brand, and we have built them a network of mechanics across the UK, which is now bookable on their website. So if you buy a bike from them, you effectively get the bike shop experience of knowing where you're going to go, and those bike shops are all trained and they know exactly what's going on with these bikes. And Higgy essentially, for all the warranties and stuff, can specify the services that they want those bike shops to do when they do come through. And obviously, one of our elements that we touched on briefly is like the job report that we can generate for the customer. So the D2C brand can effectively build the checklist of items that they want everyone to cover, that they know is kind of like within the warranty, and then send customers to any of these bike shops who they know are going to do exactly the same thing. Which means that customer then obviously gets a way better experience because they have a person to speak to and tell them about their bike, particularly if they don't really know what's going on. And they don't have to then post bikes everywhere and faff around trying to find a bike shop in an area where their shop is who might not have never heard of them before, and therefore is not willing to touch that brand, and then just causes all sorts of chaos. We're also working with a company called Scarpa. I don't know if either of you guys have come across them. It's one that Chris Hoy is invested in, which is like a clip-on e-bike kit which drives the rear rotor. So they spent a load of money. I think Red Bull Racing have kind of helped them develop the rear rotor technology to help it drive. And I went to test ride one a few before we agreed that we were going to support them. And it's generally quite amazing, to be fair. I thought it was going to be really jumpy, and the power delivery was going to be really poor. I'd just come back before I'd seen them as well. I was e-biking in the Alps, so I was pretty clued up on what it should feel like. And yeah, it's amazing. But so essentially what you do is you basically have to fit a new rear rotor, which allows the Scarpa unit to drive the bike. And it's basically appropriate for any bike, rim brake or disc brake you can fit it onto. But essentially, you should be able to fit it at home. I'm sure you guys can fit one, because obviously I'd hope you would be able to. But obviously, from a consumer, if you've got to tell them that you need to fit a rear rotor, they're like, okay, that sounds good. So essentially, we're building out a network of them just to help get those units fitted for the customers. Yeah. Which is a super easy job for the mechanic. It's taking 10 minutes. But then they win that customer, and then that customer's coming back, and they're probably going to get a free service, a full service out of it as well, because they're going to want their bike up and running properly. And that's just something that is completely unique to the Scarpa brand, but something that they needed desperately, and that is a network of mechanics that are bookable for this kind of thing, which we can kind of facilitate. So that's something we're looking to grow out more over 2025 as well, and get a few more brands on to support that, which means that then bike shops don't have to just be reliant on beta, just reliant on customers coming in. They can start to get jobs booked from different places, these websites, these direct to consumer websites that do get a load of traffic and a load of people booking warranty services, which means they can get more steady stream of customers coming through. And obviously the seasonal effect on bike repair and bike shops is massive in the UK, because not many people like to cycle when the weather is like it is outside today, except for you, Paddy, brave man. So, just giving them a more steady stream of customers means that seasonal curve is a lot flatter. Means the business is a lot easier to run, and they can be less stressed about winter time coming around.
No, that's cool to hear. No, yeah, I think there is a real range of bike shops out there that's and that's something that we definitely at Hunt do see, that there are. We've had customers charged for wheel trues where with our UD carbon spokes, the spoke goes into the rim, and so there is a nipple looking thing which is actually just the end of the spoke that sits on the outside of the rim, so you've got to take the rim tape off and true it through the rim bed. And we've had bike shops just twisting the outside of it and then charging for a wheel true, and so it's one of those, and if they come to us first, and we do have a range of people who we've worked with and sort of in the markets that we are regularly servicing in, to give it very small instructions. It's there are some things that it looks totally normal, but actually it functions in a slightly different way, and so so that we tend to do it it's a bit more informally. It sounds like a really cool system that you guys have built, but so we are we know sort of a range of good bike shops that a lot of our customer service boys have been reps in the past, and so they know they've got good relationships with a lot of bike shops throughout the country. So specifically in the UK, sort of roughly know who has touched our product before. And I mean, it definitely is there are some bike shops that do get salty about Hunt's product, and it's one of those. I think
it's getting salty for the sake of servicing though, which is a bit of a...
Well, exactly, and there's we do sell through bike shops, and so in the post bike boom market, that has become more difficult. That we never discounted, and it's something we have had to start doing just to compete in the current marketplace. That it's something that we are always looking to get out of, and so that was always our proposition to bike shops, that we don't discount. You're not going to get a massive margin on it, but you're not going to be competing with us. And so we've had to work quite hard with the bike shops we do work with to sort of make that profitable and make that proposition work for them. Like, luckily, that's not something that it's not something that I really look at. But it's an interesting one. And I think fundamentally there's bike shops when they've sold the thing, they probably have a little bit of onus to do you a bit of a solid on the service of it. And we kind of understand that if there's a warranty job that needs to be done at a bike shop, like, we'll make sure that they get, like, we do re-rims at bike shops that fundamentally for the customer, like, not shipping a product both ways, like, that can be the best option for them. And it's something that we do leverage bike shops to get our servicing done sort of on location, and especially sort of in Europe and the rest of especially the rest of the world. Like, we're not going to be shipping wheels back from Australia to get a service done, right? It's just that's not like good for the polar bears. That's not good for us. That's not good for the customer. And so it's always a bit of a mix.
You both talked a little bit about adapting to changing market conditions in both your businesses. Do you think there's a gap in the market that still exists? And if you think there is, and you've got a business idea you want to keep secret, you don't have to tell me. But I'm curious, do you think there's still a gap for something? Bikebooks clearly filled a gap. Hunt filled a gap when it started.
Do you want to go, Paddy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one. I think fundamentally that a lot of bike product now is very, very good. That you really struggle to find, like, crap product out there that it's good, but I think the next step is all going to be around, like, customization to you and your, like, size. That is sort of the bike brands that don't offer, like, bar width choice at the point of purchase, that, like, I think necessarily, like, you just have one wheel set on your bike all year round. I think that the performance of these products are so close that, like, you could buy one set of MVs or, like, two sets of Hunts, right? And, like, sort of specialize for different use cases. And I think there's going to be more and more of that coming for the very top end. And then I think hopefully, like Claris is such a good thing for the market generally. Like, that's, I think, the coolest bike launch I've seen in, like, the last couple of years. That it's one of the guys in the office was it's built up an old Kona unit for his girlfriend with Claris on it, and like, that looks like he's probably spent, like, obviously he gets the wheels for free, like, managed to find a set of wheels, but he's probably spent 250 quid on it, and it looks like a, like, 1,500 bike. And I think that's
Qs as well.
Sorry, Qs, that's what I meant. That's I think that's the, like, you'll see separation. I think you'll see real specificity at the top end, and you'll see, like, really good product coming in at sort of lower and lower price points.
And I think, definitely right. And I think there's a load of gaps in the cycling industry where, there's opportunity to increase efficiencies and stuff. And, I think from what we see, just like supply chain as well for parts, and, even like parts between different bike shops in the UK, like, logistically, for some people, I know a load of bike shops that don't even use the suppliers, and they'll just buy stuff on Amazon or eBay because they can't get it through the suppliers because they don't have it in stock, or, they don't want to wait however long, they can't really specify that. And, say you might be looking for a specific cassette, you can't get it on the suppliers. There's probably a bike shop in somewhere in the UK that has 10 just in the cupboard that they're not going to sell anytime soon. So having a bit more, like, localized supply chain, but obviously the community is so good anyway, just a way to kind of easily distribute those parts between everybody so that everyone can kind of do the job that they need, rather than, having to, put the weight on the customer, having to wait for ages.
You get a bit of that through the reps, or through the, depending on what they call them, like, area managers. So one of the guys at Chicken is race team leader. He manages the area around me in Bedfordshire. And I remember, maybe he'd, like, if someone rang him up and says, "Oh, do you know if so-and-so has this?" And maybe, but first they'd ring around all the locals. Because I live in the Chilterns, all the bike shops locally kind of know each other. They've all sort of, they do this little rotation thing. I don't know, like, did you work in a bike shop when you were down here?
No, not when I was down here. I worked at Hargrove Cycles in Winchester as a little Saturday shop boy way back when. But I think
sometimes there's, depending on the city or the town, there's a bit of a shunt And we had this in Cambridge with tech startups, but occasionally someone will end up working their way through each of the bike shops in the local area. They'll start off as the Saturday shop boy, then they'll work their way up to assistant mechanic, and then they'll go, oh well, there's a head mechanic here, so I'll go and be head mechanic somewhere else. And eventually they come back round, end up managing or owning one of the shops.
Yeah, it's very common, I would say, of how people get into shop ownership.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, people retire, people hand over, people buy out.
But yeah, on the the supply point, I think obviously they do around the reps.
Yeah,
the different thing. But if there was a platform where you could go on and search for your part and see who's got it in, regardless of having to ring anybody, it would save them a lot of time, and obviously just is more cash flow for the other shops as well that perhaps are sitting on this stock.
Do you think that will come through with something like Bike Matrix and the integration with that?
Yeah, I think so. Bike Matrix is super interesting. I know their founder. I speak to him quite a lot. So yeah, I think it's probably there's a bit of time, a bit of way off that coming in fully. But I think integratable into whatever platform, as long as it's like system agnostic, and you can kind of have that in any system that you're using. It definitely will add value in that sense.
Yeah, so I've never thought of, but yes, when I worked at Hargraves, we had it was 7 shops. Well, Hargraves, rest in peace. But it had 7 shops, and a van would go around 2 times a week and move stock from shop to shop. And it meant that I assumed the business had to hold much less stock, and never really got involved in it. But yeah, something like that for more universal would be really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but particularly when the big boys can compete, they can see the stock in every shop. You walk into any large retail chain store, and you walk into Next. Let's not name any big bike shops just to try and avoid any letters in the post. But you walk into a Next and you say, "Oh, I need this T-shirt in a size large. Do you have it?" No, but the town over does have it. I can order it in for you, and it'll be here in 2 days.
Exactly.
You don't have that for independent bike shops, and that's how they can really. Yeah, I agree. That seems like a way that they could really start to compete.
Yeah, exactly. Something I need to look at, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There you go. So my format, and I think a lot of the formats for people on Bikebook is mobile. I go to people, I fix bikes on the spot, or I put them on the back of my car and take them home. Obviously, that for if I wasn't in the bike industry, Monday to Friday I'm an engineer. Don't really have time to be fixing my own bikes. I'm squeezing in the time to grow this business. But are you seeing a rise in people that you've had established bike shops, and then there was a bit of a boom in COVID of people popping up?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's going to be an increasing number of mobile mechanics going out?
I think so. I also think it's a super hard business model to get working properly, particularly with historical practices in the bike trade, because I think one, obviously you're massively at risk of someone just saying, yeah, can you come fix my bike, and you're like 100%, what bike is it? And they say, I'm not really sure, it's red, whatever. And then you go out there, realize you can't solve it. If you are working purely from a van, means then you have to go back and then do the job again, which obviously all the travel time is time that you're not obviously earning any money, because unless you're charging good collection fees, which you definitely should be if you're a mechanic. Then you can just do every job twice, which obviously means you're super inefficient, and then can't get to that many bikes a day, which means your revenue is always going to be limited. But I mean, if you can get it working properly, I know obviously your business and a few other mobile shops who are super successful, who have cracked the key almost of how to actually get it working. And I think that is a blend of collection and return. Yeah. And also, if you're doing a collection and return service, from the customer's perspective, it's awesome, right? Because you just your bike's there broken, and then it comes back and it's working. And
they're not spending time on getting into town, finding parking, petrol. And then probably you're in town. You're like, oh yes, there's a coffee shop there. Yeah. Go spend £5 on a flat white and Costa.
Exactly. And I would say just on that, obviously, if you are doing that kind of business model, it probably means you've got a unit somewhere, whether that's at home or somewhere else. But doesn't necessarily have to be high street facing.
Yeah,
you have
lower
to pay.
Overheads.
Yeah, don't have to pay obviously. Less overheads and business rates, which means that you're keeping a lot more for your money, which is obviously key. And I think it's going to be a bigger proportion of what the local bike shop industry will be going forward. And I think it's good for everyone, because I think better servicing, a better experience for the customer. But they've just got to make sure that they know how to make it work properly. And a lot of that is just how much info that you're going to get at the point of booking.
Yes.
So you do know what you're coming into, particularly if you are planning to fix it on site. And if you don't even know what bike it is and what drivetrain it is, it's going to be some headaches.
100%. I had that problem at cross races. I was stocking up. I've got loads of stock at home and in my workshop, and I've got 8-speed cassettes. I've got 11-speed cassettes. I've got 12-speed chains, and it's just sitting there. I'm waiting for a bike with that need, because I scoped it up initially. Like, okay, I think I'm going to need some 12-inch tubes for if someone comes to me with a pushchair, because inevitably you keep 1 or 2 in a shop, because someone will always come in with a pushchair. It happens. They walk in like, my buggy's broken. Can you fix it? And then like loads of 28Cs for Schrader valves, that sort of thing. And the overheads of keeping that stock and like the actual asset value of that being sat is a frustration.
Yeah.
Which is why, from my side, with what I've liked about Bikebook is I've been able to set the collection fee. And I've looked at the competition locally, and my collection fee is a lot higher, because I factored in, well, if I'm charging for servicing time at this much per hour, why would I not be charging for that time that it takes me to get there? I've got a client in St Albans, and it's 50 minutes for me to get there.
Yeah.
And luckily he's really wised up. He's really, really clued up. Knows what needs doing to his bikes. He just wants someone to do it. So I'm there. I'm prepared. I have all the stock, or he has all the stuff bought, ready for me to fit, because I've got all the tools to do it. But traveling 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, and charging £5 collection, you've already spent more than that on fuel.
Exactly.
And your tyres and everything else. Because if you've got all your tools in the van, you're putting more wear on your tyres and everything.
And people are happy to pay. Like, they understand.
100%,
you're actually driving 50 minutes, and they don't expect that to be included.
Yeah, and it's a balance of quality. And this is part of the reason for the podcast, part of the reason for the Reels, the YouTube, all the rest of it, is to demonstrate that there is trust and quality there. Because one of the things I've struggled with being a mobile mechanic is, you got a shop, it's bricks and mortar, the manager, the Saturday lad, it's familiar, it's like, it's a safe space, it's associated with your cycling club. A mobile mechanic, you can look at a picture on the website of the bloke, looks a bit dodgy, and this guy's going to come to your house and service your bike, but all you've got to go off is like, he's mobile. All I've got to go off is reviews.
Yeah.
So I think the mobile setup, particularly with how you've built in, so for anyone that's not used it, the Bikebook system has like a pin sort of area thing that you can put outer radii on, and you can incrementally increase how much it costs to. So if my mum wanted a bike service, for example, it would cost her a minimum of £30 for me to just go there.
At least.
Yeah.
And a dinner.
Yeah. So it's. Yeah, I think it's a real trap for some people that are starting out, because they want to compete and they want to get that market in, but they'll just hemorrhage money on fuel and travel time.
Exactly, and I think it'd be so easy if you are doing that, and if you are like handwriting invoices, to just like, you kind of like the person who just fixed their bike. You're like, oh well, maybe I just won't charge collection fees today because I feel bad. Where ours is all just automated. They already know. They can actually pay up front if you want them to pay for that up front.
Yeah.
So then you don't even think about it. And a few of our other businesses that are similar to you, like their biggest feedback was, I feel like comfortable charging what I should be charging now because of all the stuff they get, and the process is just automating it onto the invoice. I don't have to then feel bad about writing £20 for a collection fee to this old lady who's fixing her grandson's bike or whatever.
Yeah, 100%. It's the visibility helps and the information helps. When people have the justification of saying, like they break it down and saying, okay, I'm going to charge you for a brake bleed, but in a brake bleed, what I'm going to do is get all the air out of the system. I'm going to put new hydraulic fluid in. I'm going to expand out your pistons. I'm going to clean them with cotton bud. and then oil them back up, push them back in. And you're like, I didn't know you did all of that. It's like, yeah, that's why it's 40 quid a break.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it takes time, and it takes time for you to get there.
Exactly, and like you guys as biomechanics, like bikes are just as complicated now getting there as cars, so you should be getting paid similar, and don't undervalue yourselves is one of the main takeaways.
100%. But I think bike shops are waking up to it now, and managers of bike shops are waking up to it now.
Yeah, definitely.
There are definitely some places that are going to start hemorrhaging mechanics because, cycling's going to become more popular again. Hopefully.
It's on the way up. 2025 is going to be big.
Yeah, 2025 is going to be big. We've got Ice Bike in a couple of weeks. And,
yeah. See you then.
Yeah, so... I've got my microphone in the way of my notes. That's handy. So one of the things that I think was quite relevant this week, and Paddy and I have both sat at university and watched bike racing in the background. I'm sure you've done a similar sort of thing. Discovery Plus, TNT Sports. I'm sure you've seen...
End of an era, that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
GCN, rest in peace.
Yeah.
Better days.
Yeah. So good. Well, they're independently owned again now. So Simon, Dan, if you're listening, please bring back live TV racing. We really miss it. But yeah, obviously the news was that Discovery Plus, who owns Eurosport, are shutting down Eurosport Cycling, and ITV won't be showing the Tour de France for free this year, which sucks because I would get home from work, I would stick on ITV player, and I would watch the highlights.
I'd have it on at work.
Exactly. There's no shame. I work in the bike industry, mate.
Even when I wasn't, just hiding when the boss comes over.
Yeah, so
that ITV theme tune as well. Honestly,
mate,
the sound of
it's
summer.
Jenny's ringtone. We're not going to give her a call because we're recording on her phone, but yeah, it's Jenny's theme tune. So give her a call. It's yeah. I won't sing the whole thing.
Maybe later.
Yeah,
Maybe.
Don't get copyright struck. That was so accurate,
So one of the things I did last year is I rocked up at a couple of races with a gazebo I borrowed from a guy at Claydon Cycling Club up near me, and I started fixing bikes. And one of the things I'd like to do this year, because it's really fun. 2, I love cyclocross racing. I don't like doing it.
Yeah,
I like watching it because it's great fun to watch the skidding out wheels, everything. So, from your business model at the moment, or the booking model at the moment, it's very B2C. It's the bike shop interfacing with the consumer. We can cut that bit out. So, one of the markets that I think is B2B.
Yeah.
So there's B2B, traditional B2B houses where you've got warehouses, Chicken, Madison, Zyro, Extra, Silvertrish, Upgrade, etc., etc.
Yeah, many more.
Many more.
Yeah.
But I think a B2, we said about cycling being quite seasonal.
Yeah.
One of the B2B options that I don't think is really talked about is booking for shops, for mechanics for shops, booking additional capacity.
Yeah.
And for events and event hire. A lot of, we talked about live cycling coming off the TV. So this is where I'm coming to is domestic cycling here is getting quite small. When I was down at uni here, and we talked about this before we started, all 3 of us have done a race at Preston Park Velodrome.
Sketchy times.
Yeah, but it is a great place to start, and the fact that it's run every year without fail. Sometimes they have to shut it down because they don't have the numbers, but it's run every year without fail. You've got marshals that aren't being paid. They're just there as volunteers. And there's nothing worse than rocking up to a race and something's broken or something's wrong. So do you think there's scope for booking of like mechanics time in a B2B or a B2, B2 event kind of setup where you can go on, you can say, who's set up to do events, who has a gazebo and a mobile setup. Can I get Paddy to come to my time trial and stand in a lay-by with me and index my, 1123 cassette?
Yeah. 100% Paddy, you can go.
Yeah, thank you. That's very kind of you.
Do you think that there's going to be space for it? Do you think there would be demand for that via your platform?
Definitely. I mean, we already do it in some capacity, mainly supporting charitable events. So we've supported London to Brighton a few times now, where all of these events, Sportives to London to Brighton, Ride London, obviously not happening anymore, but in the past they did need it. But for London to Brighton, we essentially got 21 mechanics off the Bikebook, or who are listed on Bikebook or are using Bikebook to support that ride, and obviously they're happy to pay the day rate of it. And I think it's, they always want a mix of some mobile and some static people with gazebos. And I think, it's a massive thing that a lot of events don't probably think about enough, is having the support, because riders that do these events, particularly if it's like a charitable thing where people are, doing it to raise money, they probably haven't thought that their bike might not have ridden very well, or might not be fully up and running if they're just taking it out of the shed ready to smash out 50 miles down to the south coast. And then when we do it, you'd see I think at the start in Clapham Common, we had about 4 mechanics set up, queues like round the corner for every single one, because some of them don't have any, the chains just snapped, or the brakes aren't working, or the wheels buckled to death. So it's super important to have that kind of level of support on the event side, to make sure that the riders, who are obviously the people that are paying that event to run, get to the end. And also, you inevitably, if you've got 7,000 riders, some people are going to have some mechanicals on the route, and if there's no one to kind of support them, and the derailleurs just come off, then they're kind of screwed, really. So even if that's just
raised
to bring
all that money for charity,
they're 2 miles in.
Oh no.
But then you see like some proper troopers, to be fair, going through where they just effectively make their bike into a fixie, and then they're just powering through the next 52
going
miles.
Ditchling Beacon and 5311.
Yeah, exactly. It's super low cadence.
Just imagine the pain in your legs.
I think you're walking at that point. I think
Not if it's for charity. You got to get to the top.
Get to the top and hold your bike above your head, above the Ditchling Beacon. So
exactly.
It is impressive. Some of the bikes that make it that far. It's like, I do think that's where cycling's the most impressive. Like, sort of people moving themselves under their own power, like a long distance on bikes that are like
shouldn't be
yeah, exactly. No, it's very impressive.
Everyone's got a place there, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's obviously something that we want to look at doing more. Like, we want Bikebook to be quite a big part of the cycling community, and supporting all of this kind of thing across everything. And obviously it's super beneficial for bike mechanics like you, obviously, because you can then go to these events, you're going to get a day rate, and probably 10 new customers, if they're in your area, will always come back to you after you've seen them, and enable them to get to the end of the ride. So
great for feedback as well.
Oh yeah, exactly, and great for content too. So we're looking to do more over this year for sure, and hopefully maybe we can do some in Europe as well.
So on the subject of booking people, so we've touched on bike mechanics. So one of the things that you see at road races, you won't see it at closed road races, but you see it at open road races, when they opened the gate to Milton Keynes Bowl, when they did the Tour of Sussex, which I believe you raced in.
I've done a couple of them, yeah.
You've done a couple now, yeah.
Yeah, got my head kicked in. Always good.
But one of the things those races need is they obviously close the roads, they pay for the road closures, but I don't know how much you've had involvement on the organisation side, but moto riders, you have your paramedics, you have your neutral service sometimes, in cars, and most of them are volunteers, but the paramedics you generally have to pay for. So do you think there'd be, obviously the portal at the moment this is our directory of bike mechanics. Do you think there could ever be scope for, expanding it beyond bike mechanics and bike shops to actually, touched on event support, so further event support? These companies are doing this event support. They did London to Brighton. They did Tour of Sussex. We're just picking stuff in the south now because I can't think of anything. Because all the stuff up north, Rutland Classic maybe, something like that. And where you've got big races, small races. Berkhamsted near me, Berkhamsted Cycling Club, run a nearly annual road race around some of the local villages, and they need to pay for the cars, the motos.
Definitely. I mean, the search engine is pretty, it's set up for bike mechanics at the moment, but it can be pretty easily tailored to do whatever is needed to add the most value. So I think depending on how the support of the events that we're going to do this year goes, we'll get a lot more feedback on what we need to add. And our whole premise of like how we operate is we basically only build things that people want, rather than me telling or Sam saying this is what we should build. So yeah, based on feedback. So based on what we need in the event side, and also on the event side, the booking element of it can be streamlined, so you don't have queues around the corner of people because you know you're going to be in trouble. You can see the 15-minute slot you need to go into the mechanic to get your bike checked over before you do the ride. It's something that we've had a lot of mechanics tell us to do as well. Like, I don't know if either of you have ever seen or done RAB, Ride Across Britain, that they're not doing anymore. But so one of our main advisors, who's a bike mechanic, basically runs that as an event support with various mechanics across the UK. And I think he said they saw over 1,000 bikes in 2 days because the amount of people that they have doing it. And he kept ringing me every day and was like, I need a way to book everyone in because this is just manic. So yeah, there's definitely scope to be able to operate in that area.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting one. I think it depends on the event. I think especially like Tour of Sussex, I have been in the car park fitting a new rear mech to my so that my rear mech got knocked in the crit, had to ride the team time trial on Beachy Head with a chain that kept falling off the jockey wheels, and so got shelled on the last climb. But so fitting a rear mech in the car park was a stressful experience that I'd prefer to not have to go through again. But yeah, I do think that sadly these events, unless they go down the more triathlon model where people are paying significant money to enter these things. I mean, Tour of Sussex is an expensive example, but you can do a Surrey League for if you remember, it's 22 quid to race, and so and sadly with the field sizes rarely being above 40 these days, it's
SD card full.
Don't worry about it. It's just the GoPro, and I don't have a spare one.
No way, yeah. But yeah, with the if you're talking about 40 people in a race, they're just fundamentally they are breaking even. The NEG riders do it for free. You have to pay the St John's ambulance to come out for for the safety aspect. But that's for the road racing side of it. That's where it's really tight. But for the circuit racing, I think there's definitely a place for that sort of thing. That you might not be able to get back in the race, but if you've ridden there, you could definitely then ride home. So when you're doing these things, stuff does break, and I think there's definitely a place for that. That it's fundamentally, until it's pro racing, finishing your bike race just isn't that important. But finishing these sportives and finishing these charitable activities, it's where the goal is to finish rather than some performance goal. I think there's absolutely the support there can be super valuable.
And just remind me, we're actually supporting a event this year, all being well, in partnership with a company called Link My Ride. I don't know if you guys have come across Link My Ride. No. It's Tom Pidcock's one of the co-founders of that.
Okay.
But this ride's called the Great Tour, which is essentially a 65-day event circumnavigation around the UK. Obviously, you don't have to do all 65 days.
Not got those holiday days.
But essentially, people will do different segments, and it's run a few times in the past. The guy who's running it used to organise the Tour of Britain, so he's pretty well connected in the event space. But Bikebook is going to be supporting that a lot on the event side with mechanics following around and having that neutral support, because that is emphasised that it is a ride, not a race, although I'm sure people will try and race it. So the goal is just to get to the end, so making sure that obviously you've got everyone there who is needed to make sure that they do get to the end. It's something that we're basically going to be in charge of, so obviously everyone will now make it to the end because we're going to be there.
Yeah, exactly. Got the pro mechanics there.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you guys think that there's space for, from the top down, we're losing a lot of coverage, from a pro racing side, from a sports side? Do you think there's more grounds to be building for individuals to now build from the ground up? You keep hearing grassroots racing in Britain is dead. That sort of rhetoric keeps coming around. I think it puts people off. Paddy's still racing. I'm not because I drank too much beer.
I'd come last.
Yeah. I don't know. I was still racing for my sins. I love it. I love the competition. That's sort of that nothing motivates me more than going to I'm going to go to Perths in Portsdown road race as it is now, and like gonna get my head kicked in by like full-time riders, and I find that incredibly motivating to see the sort of level that can be achieved and to go and really test yourselves. And so like, it still is there, and it's definitely difficult for those riders because there's nowhere for them to go. That there are people who've had top 20s at the Lincoln GP who are still riding 2-3 Surrey leagues because there's nowhere for them to go. And so for me as a like full-time jobber, like it's like actually it means I can like the level of racing is so high now in like a second cat road race. Like I've like been training for like 10 years now, and like genuinely year on year I'm still seeing improvements, but just that like still mid-pack because the level seems to go up by the same amount every year. But so yeah, I think that obviously like with this is the golden generation almost of British cycling, right? Sort of I grew up with in that 2012 bubble, like I was 16 when I went and watched the Olympics, right? When we got to go and see some basketball, but go like around the Olympic Park, and that was an amazing experience, watching all that on the TV. And so yeah, it's a real shame that it sort of feels like it's being like cashed in, and British cycling like repeatedly feel like they sort of just slightly let the community down. So it's a difficult one. It's that in so many realms, I think there's real positivity about sort of some of the grassroots racing, sort of Preston Parks, like they've used to run only a 6-race series. They've really upped the amount of racing there, so that you go around here, so the Goodwood Motor Race Circuit. I mean, there's 200 people there, like every Wednesday night racing, and it's sort of actually this hunt. Something we've really tried to do is we covered all the entries of the Fourth Cats women's race, and so that was the first time the women's Fourth Cat race like was larger than the men's one, right? And so like we did it the last race of the season. I think this year we're going to try and do it earlier on, so that then hopefully there's some follow through. And there's really cool stuff happening, and I do think that road racing possibly is going to be a bit of a dying thing because it is expensive, it's difficult to do, it's difficult to put on. It's bloody hard. Like you've got to be fit to get around nowadays. It's sort of you can't just be a good club rider and expect to get around a third cat anymore, really. But I think that sort of that circuit racing, there's a real like appetite for it, and you're not away from cars, and it's sort of like amazingly it's cheaper to run on these closed circuits, and it's not necessarily like the classic road racing that sort of I would probably prefer to do if I had my way, but it's. I think you've got to move with the times a little bit on some of this stuff. You can't just the roads are so busy. You can't necessarily expect to do like 30 road races a year in sort of the South region. Like it's just not realistic. But yeah. No.
What coverage would you want to see of these races? So the CTT, for example, so the cycling time trials in the UK, and there's British Cycling. British Cycling put on all the road races, CTT do all the hill climbs and the time trials. CTT do quite a nice thing that they post results about. They don't. They take the odd photo and they post their results on their Instagram, on their website, and they shout about it. They don't have the biggest following because they're not British cycling. If you put British in the name, British people sort of flock to it. But how do you guys think that we can, as cyclists that enjoy watching racing, that Paddy is a cyclist that enjoys doing racing, how do you think that from the ground up we can look at it and with platforms like Bikebook, with mechanics coming out of the woodwork and being able to be found, how do you think that as a big community, because cycling is a community, that we can shout from the ground up and say this Cat 4 race is cool, this is cooler than going and watching five-a-side football on a Saturday. This is
I don't know.
It's going around super fast.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think like fundamentally, like those sites like CGT, like you look at your own results on these platforms, basically, like that's how they function at the moment. That it's not viewable. I think fundamentally, like watching road racing at the side of the road is not really a spectator sport. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, fundamentally,
yeah.
like it is a sport that is much better televised, because
Definitely.
you just don't like see the action. And so I always like think that it's like thinking about how you make an event around it. So my partner is not a cyclist. She doesn't like, she rides a bike to commute to work sometimes, but that's about it. And like, she loves watching me go and race track at Preston Park, because there's 6 races in the evening. There's always something going on. It's exciting. Like watching me like ride
Yeah, you can see
4
the whole
laps
thing.
of a course of like a road race. Like, I much more enjoy that racing, but fundamentally that's not a profitable enterprise. And then like if you did like, it's like, rather than having like road races, have more track racing omniums, more events, more like cycle events. And so you go and get like, you have 5 or 6 categories racing each 3 or 4 times a day. You have people coming down for a whole day. You have some food there. You have a mechanic there.
Yeah.
You have a like, there's I can't remember the name of it, but there was a NatB road race in the south that did something very similar. And it's sort of, the course was just like in a sort of a clover shape, so you always came back to this central crossways, and so people would stand there and you could see it come past lots of times. They had like a beer tent and spectators could be there, and it's actually like they thought about the spectator experience. Like, sort of, if I'm going to drag a partner along to these road races, like, okay, like the village hall was on the course, so the parking was on the course, that you turn up to a Surrey League 2-3 and you'll drive there, park 5 miles away from the course, ride to the course. There's like, you ride around some nondescript lanes and then ride back. Like, just, there is no way to make that commercially viable as a spectator experience. And I think, it probably means the courses need to change a bit, and we need to. And it's incredibly hard to get new courses signed off. And so
moving more the way of like you mentioned about Goodwood. Goodwood's a big one down here. So more the way of motor racing circuits, the way sort of F1 is televised. You can sit in the stands, you can watch the car come past, you hear it's different every time. Sometimes Hamilton's ahead, sometimes Verstappen's ahead. Usually Verstappen's ahead.
I also think it's like a bit of a content thing as well. Like the people putting on these events should shout about it more, and like obviously like we're doing now, it's a lot easier to make your own high quality content which kind of markets what you're doing, so that more people realize that they could go and watch this cross race that they probably don't even know is on, and make it a bit more accessible in that instance.
Cross racing at Preston Park tomorrow.
And that's another great example, right? Like, it's like, it's funny to watch. I mean, cross, I think, is a real success story, right? Like, like, because fundamentally the way they run it is like, they thought about, they're not necessarily trying to like sell that product, but like the South East London League and the Wessex League, that sort of the kids can race, then it's the sort of the dads, the 40 vets, like next, and then it's like,
you got the chip band, you got the beer tent,
exactly.
sign-ons nice and close to the course, you can walk the course, everyone takes their dogs, everyone's got, mum and dad are in the pits, you got Pro Cycle Mobile on the entrance.
Exactly, so everyone's running up.
Like, mate, my mech's come off. That kind of thing. So,
I think that's maximum fun for now.
Definitely.
Muddy cross racing.
Room to grow.
It's good for mechanics, that as well, isn't it?
Very
Get
good.
more people who just destroy a bottom bracket a week.
Genuinely, the worst. We did. Jenny and I did 3 or 4. How many? 4. We did 4 cross races, and the day the most people came up to speak to us, it was chucking it down at Ashland School in Berkhamsted. It's Verulam CC, so it's an Auburn cycling club. They'd put on this like cross race, and there was just this sea of mud everywhere, like mechs coming off, chains coming off, stuff being bent, all sorts of bits and bobs. So that was, for them it probably wasn't great, but most of the stuff was pay as you feel, because it was just there to support the race. So I think cross has got a lot of room to grow, and maybe circuit racing has as well. Just got some nice reminders of my knee
Yeah.
about circuit racing.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Preston Park's a great place to watch it, to be fair, because
Yeah.
it's just
You got
there's
the
usually a
stands
bit
as well.
a bit of chaos going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and especially track. There's sort of like regularly friends who like go and get a couple of pizzas and just come and go and sit in stands and like heckle furiously. But yeah,
I mean, I've watched
Yeah.
you race. I think you've watched me race.
yeah,
And yeah, it's a real community vibe. I remember like seeing back when Hunt was quite new. I remember seeing you and Mark and Ollie, and just a few other guys coming down from Hunt race team, maybe Si as well, just coming down, and all of you together, all in your matching kit, and there were a few local critics. It was really good.
yeah.
Could have done with a beer tent and a chip van.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a coffee van now that turns up, and
Yeah.
so it's they're starting to get there, but it's
Yeah.
difficult, and but yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? It's like it's you love when British National Championships, when that's televised, is far more interesting than like a flat Tour de France stage.
Yeah.
Because like amateur or like lower level racing where the teams are like it's not even like there's all sorts of stuff going on there like massive teams, some people are just way too strong, but it just means that it's total chaos.
Yeah.
And it always ends up racing like a classic. Like it's sort of from the Surrey League 2-3s, I think like 80% of the races this year were won from breakaways. That it's sort of in like you just don't see that in pro road racing. Like it's all controlled for the sprint finish, and like the final 5k of a sprint finish is like perfect television.
Yeah.
But the rest of it is like pretty dull, right?
Yeah.
And I think actually it's bringing people into the world of these nappies. Like it will. Like
Yeah.
it's right. There's bodies everywhere.
Like, it's
Every
madness.
single one.
It's
Yeah,
madness.
But yeah, no.
So we're gonna close up this one now because we've lost the GoPro.
Okay.
Not just because we've lost the GoPro, but also I'm nearly at the end of my questions for you, Jake.
Thank you very much.
So, one for both of you. What's the worst? Because we're talking about fixing bikes. What's the worst mechanical disaster you've ever had?
I'd say all my family are from Yorkshire, so obviously great cycling up there, great climbs, not very good phone signal, and I was going down this massive descent, lost my rear mech, managed to kind of fix my bike into a 53 kind of 11 situation, but had no phone signal and like 2 or 3 big climbs to get me home. So the weather wasn't great. So yeah, it took me a lot of walking in my new set of cleats after I got home.
Nice.
But yeah, just pretty demoralising. I was pretty finished as well at the end of but before that had happened.
Is that on electronic gears or in cables?
Yeah, cables. Yeah, so it was bad times.
Do you have a multi-tool on you?
Yeah, that's about it.
Paddy?
I think that's one like the one that really sticks in the memory. Like quite minor mechanical, but so I was we were families on holiday in Durness, the very most north bit of Scotland going, so the flat bit at the top, and gashed a tyre really badly. And while you're trying to like pack it with like gel wrappers and stuff to get that new tube in, like the clegs just like descending on you, which are just like just being like bitten savagely while trying to do quite an intricate like repair of like getting this tube not to pop out the side of the tyre. And eventually got taken pity on by a man who came past and gave me some like bug spray as you're sort of like just been absolutely ravaged. So that was like, possibly the most miserable I've ever been on like a bike ride.
There's ups and downs on bike rides.
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds a proper low point.
Yeah, that was quite low.
Yeah.
What about you, Josh?
I've had a couple where my mum had to come and pick me up. One was embarrassing because I went through too many tubes on some super tight rims. But the I think the sketchiest one was it was down here going towards Hassocks. And I was coming down the road that goes up, out towards London Road, where you got that cycle path you cut off towards Hassock. Coming down towards Hassocks to turn off right towards the bottom of the beacon, towards Ditchling. I just wanted to go to Proper for a coffee, but I had an underlying crack in my handlebars. Going down, hit a pothole, and then all of a sudden, I have no handlebar on one side.
Oh my!
So that was a bit sketchy.
Did you come off?
No. Strangely, when I come off, I seem to protect my bike. So whenever
That's a
I've
priority,
come
to be
off,
fair.
I've protected my bike. I might have fractured something or gashed a big chunk out of myself, but no, the bike's always fine when I come off. Seemingly, yeah. Whenever I've had a mechanical or anything like that, I've been able to stay upright. I had a mud guard going to my rear mech, locking up the rear wheel, and yeah, just rotated back round. I won't say what the brand is because I might get in trouble.
Yeah, we don't
But
want that.
yeah, it locked up round my back wheel, came loose, and mushed up my rear mech, and my mum had to come and pick me up.
Yeah, my mum saved me on many bike rides, to be fair.
Yeah.
Even with this was like a very sugary drink or something.
Nice.
Too a bit
Yeah,
hard.
yeah.
Too hard.
And yeah, one final question for you, Jake, is you started Bikebook with the guys that you're working down here with. Obviously, that's very cycling focused. If you had to start a completely different business tomorrow, if you solved another problem in the cycling industry, so you're solving one problem, but you spotted another one. You're like, oh, actually, I'm working on Bikebook at the moment. This can wait. So if you could start it tomorrow, what would that business be?
It's a tough question. It'd probably be to do with that supply chain thing that I mentioned, and having a bit of a marketplace that people can go in, whether that's consumers or businesses, to be fair, to find parts and access parts, so they don't have to buy through Amazon and other things. But yeah, I mean, there's loads of stuff you could do, but it takes a lot of time. It's pretty stressful as well. So yeah.
All right. Thank you, Paddy. Thank you, Jake.
No worries. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone watching, listening. My sincere hope is this has been insightful and educational. Stay tuned for more on the road ahead. You can find your nearest mechanic by visiting Bikebook's website, which is
Bikebook.co.uk.
I'm glad I didn't say bikebook.com.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you both. And that's us done for this one.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.